Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about the emasculation nation. In the dictionary, emasculation is defined as the act of depriving a male of the functions which characterize the sex or castration. Number 2, the act of depriving of vigor or strength, specifically the act of eliminating or altering parts of a literary work in such a manner as to deprive it of its original force or vividness. Number 3, the state of being emasculated, effeminacy, or unmanly weakness. So, Western society has feared the black man since the first interaction. Yet over and over, black people have warned that you cannot sit back and passively relax while the rest of the world carries on. The transatlantic slave trade is proof of that. We live on a planet where strength and power commands respect, no matter how deceptively benign the appearance of what the outsider's intentions may be. No matter how high, far, and fast mankind builds its civilizations, it will never be too far away from nature. It is both inside your mind and body, and outside your window, just in case you forget what it looks like. Or, to borrow a term from popular culture, nature is metal. So, no matter how much genteel society expounds on virtues of high civility, there are always plans to control, conquer, and isolate another group. Recently, there was an interview of Cat Williams, the comedian, that reminded all black people of the hidden hands that attempt to strangle the life out of black masculinity. These attacks come in the form of actual castration and emasculation during the slavery era in American history. Then during Reconstruction, the intimidation campaigns, and following that, the blackface minstrel shows and the clinically eugenic medical experiments of Tuskegee University.
When we talk about castration, there's a history of physical castration, not just emotional castration. So, for instance, in the Bible, you learn about eunuchs. Like literally, so these rich Arab cats would have these harem of women, right? So who would they get to protect these women? The biggest black nigga they could find. But what did they do? No, they made him a eunuch. Let's not say they got a eunuch.
They cut his balls off.
Yes, they get the biggest nigga they could find, cut his balls off, give him a sword, and tell him to protect the harem. So if y'all want an example of that, do y'all remember the cartoon with Bugs Bunny and he's Daffy Duck's running around trying to get the damn lamp, and this nigga pops up, says Hassan Chop. That big motherfucker with that sword would have been black in antiquity. He would have been black, and he would have been running around with that sword, but he would have been protecting that harem. Again, another example of black emasculation. George Washington Carver, one of our greatest minds. All y'all niggas know about George Washington Carver. All white people know about the guy with the peanut, right? Peanut, sweet potatoes, all that shit. He was a eunuch. He was adopted by a white family in Iowa, taken from his family down south, and they didn't want him to have sex with their daughter, so they would castrate him. So the history of castration among black males is a real thing.
Now, hold on. Now, y'all need to understand there was no anesthesia back then.
There was anesthesia, doesn't mean they used it. You did, just because they had it doesn't mean
do you think they used anesthesia on him?
I don't want to think about it. How about that?
Dude, that's the 1800s.
Yes, I know. I don't want to think about it. The point we're making is that Roscoe had pointed out some stuff, but I'm trying to give you some historical facts. This shit can be looked up. This shit can be substantiated. So when somebody talks about emasculation of a black man, it's a whole different vibe. It is essentially they want everything about your blackness, everything about your malehood, except the actual manhood part. They want the strength, the agility, the warrior spirit, the intelligence. They want all that, but they don't want you to procreate. And so when you understand that there's a real history of that, when you see that these people who voluntarily give up their manhood just for success, last night at work, is a white dude I'm cool with. He's really into this stuff, and he's asking me questions. He's younger than me, he said, have you seen the Cat Williams interview? I was like, yeah. He said, so he asked me, well, so what's the deal with trying to put a black man in a dress? I said, you got to understand, it's different for a black man than is a white man. You've had white actors, but they were never put in question, or putting them in a dress never. It didn't fuck with their message. They
Okay,
would have been.
I'm gonna give white motherfuckers an example of that. So look at Braveheart, the Scottish. They're already wearing dresses, but the way they were treated by the British is somewhat similar, but not that much similar. But it kind of adjacent in a way.
Well, you got to understand that there. A friend of mine just brought this shit up. The people who we consider white now were not considered white back then. People don't understand that. And when you try to explain it to people, like, what do you mean? Scots were considered black. Now,
no. You're using an analogy. They weren't considered black like black people. No, they weren't.
No.
The Scots were white motherfuckers, like for a long time. No, what you're thinking about are the original inhabitants of Ireland, and people mess this up a lot. What happened is the original inhabitants of Ireland were black people
with blue eyes. Black with blue eyes. No, I'm aware of that. Hold on, these are all different. But Scotland is named after who? Scotia, which is an Egyptian princess. The original inhabitants of Scotland were black also.
But the thing, William Wallace was a white motherfucker.
I'm sure he was, but what I'm saying is that these English motherfuckers know the real history, and that's why they treat other islands, the British Isles, Ireland, Scotland, and England. England treats these other isles like shit because they know. Also, the Moors had an army that occupied Ireland for many years. So even after the original inhabitants were forced off their own land, there was still the Moors still had an occupation. We see that stuff.
Got it. Listen. Jack Johnson was way harder than Charles Bronson. Paul Robeson stood tall and fought the power. Marcus Garvey did his part. And Malcolm X said, hell no, break their jaws. Muhammad Ali is still the greatest. Muhammad Ali was too much for white folks to handle.
Hold on. Hold on. You're laughing. I got a story about that. So.
But they are shining examples of righteous intent.
Oh no! Hold it. Go back to Ali. You met my homeboy. I can't say his name on the air, but you know my homeboy, and he's a white guy. And you met him. You know he's cool. He was telling me. He said you do realize that some of my golf buddies are old. These older retired guys in their their 70s, 60s. They still don't like Muhammad Ali to this day. Like even though most people in the world, like, yeah, he's a great guy, they still are pissed that he didn't go to Vietnam. They're still pissed that he beat the shit out of Chuck Wepner. They're still like, he's like, he said he was talking about Ali, he did this and this, and they're like, yeah, but he didn't go to Nam. He's like, what? People still hold a grudge to that.
And the crazy part about it is those guys are so psyoped into thinking that Vietnam was the right thing to do when it was a complete psyop, false flag the entire fucking time. Even after being told that it was, and it was a meat grinder for young American boys. Y'all motherfuckers still want to fucking protect that shit like it's some type of sacred cow.
How about one of the other guys I told you, I call him Killer. I told you about this guy. This guy was on an A team, right? He served like, so I'm at a gun show and I'm telling him like, hey, they got a bunch of World War II stuff, and he's like, and so a lot of these white guys have some of that Nazi paraphernalia. He's just the opposite. He gets pissed. He's like, why do you even have this? This is socialism. This is this. He runs out of I'm like, God damn this, and it's crazy because you got these other white guys over here who really didn't do shit. Then you got this motherfucker over here who's like, no, I was there. This is, he wasn't in World War II. He was in Nam. He's like, do you understand what that really represents? You guys are trying to make it it's like white history and stuff. It's not. And so it's crazy that when you got somebody who really knows about that shit, they don't take it lightly. They don't take the racism part lightly. They don't take any of that shit lightly. He's like, nah, that's some fucked up shit. So it's crazy that these motherfuckers right here, like, he didn't go to war. Like,
listen, they're cosplayers.
Yeah,
all that shit. They're just like these Civil War reenactment motherfuckers.
dude, that still bugs me to this day. Because when you sit there and tell them, you do realize these were the bad guys. Oh no, but they were better funded and had better strategy. And I'm like, yeah, and there you go again. So you want me to be listening to, doing what you say because you got a whip, nigga. Fuck. Look, the point of this show is that people really don't understand the problem with emasculating a black man, and that there's a historical reference point for all of it, physical and emotional and whatever, even to the point where, like, if you listen to our podcast in the past, we always bring up the fact that, why does Malcolm X have a holiday? Let me tell you why, because you white folks pick the holiday.
Listen. This is the thing with this conversation that Cat Williams had.
Yeah,
if you look at all of the comments from black people online, most of them come from these black comedians either being violated sexually or putting on dresses. If you notice, the other 80% of the conversation nobody is talking about. And the reason why black people keep focusing on just this part is because masculinity is important in the black community, because your self-image is very important in the black community. The way you walk, the way you carry yourself is important, because that's the nature of black people. Like, we roast the shit out of each other. And if you come across as weak, we're going to call you out.
Look, I'm sorry. No,
so
there's a pastor out there. A lot of these people are coming. I don't want to say they're coming out the woodwork. Some of these messages were already out there. But because of Cat, a lot of these messages are floating to the top now. Cream will rise. A lot of them are floating to the top where you're like.
But these are conversations that black people have been having for the longest time. Yeah. Black men in particular. There was a pastor that made a sermon recently, and the video is being passed around online now. And this old man, it's an older black man, like he's about 60 years old, and he's saying that black people put their entertainment before their faith, before their spirituality. And what he was saying, he was talking about how, nigga, shut up and let me make my goddamn point. So what he was saying is that black people are so concerned with, like, being entertained that they gave Tyler Perry a pass. Yeah. And so by giving him a pass, this guy overlooked all these black women that were around him every day, all the time, in real life, on the set, that could have easily taken the place of him playing Medea. This guy was the writer, the producer, the director. He wore all these hats, but yet he could not give up that one role. And there's hilarious, talented black women that could easily play that role of this big, huge black woman, you know what I'm saying, with a larger than life personality, that many of us know black women like that. So it's not like this is like some diamond in the rough. This is a character that basically any talented black woman could play. But yet this guy continued to play this role for decades. For decades, this guy kept putting on this damn dress, and everybody kept giving it a pass. But let's go way back into the past and look at a guy like Flip Wilson. And Flip Wilson, Flip Wilson was a comedian who was on television, and he became famous for the Flip Wilson show. And the Flip Wilson show had a character called Ernestine. And Ernestine was Flip Wilson in drag, him dressing up as a black woman. Now, what this pastor was saying in this sermon that I just mentioned is that how that this thing became normalized because we're so willing to give people a pass if something is funny. A lot of the arguments reflect this mentality online that support these actors and comedians dressing up like women. Oh, if it's just, in the context of comedy, and if it's funny, it doesn't matter. I disagree, because when you go back, and you look at people like Flip Wilson, it didn't stop with him. So then after Flip Wilson, the next black dude that put on a dress was Garrett Morris on Saturday Night Live. Then I'm like, oh man, damn. Why do they have these black dudes dressing up in these fucking dresses? So then who came after him? Then the next one after him was Martin Lawrence. Martin Lawrence in the early 90s on The Martin Show had a character named Shanae. And this motherfucker was dressing up like a woman. So he goes off and he becomes famous, and he's doing movies like Bad Boys with Will Smith, which is another guy that had this gay sex scene that you didn't see penetration, but it was implied in this his movie called 6 Degrees of Separation. Now, but before that, a couple years, Jamie Foxx was playing Wanda. So Jamie Foxx wants to be famous. Jamie Foxx was already a very funny comedian and actor on the show in Living Color. But then he came out with Wanda. So then this continues. So then you have this like gap where there's no black men dressing up as women until 1994. And we have a 6 Degrees of Separation attachment to that movie because the movie To Wong Foo was shot in our hometown, partially shot in Omaha, Nebraska, and in Lincoln, Nebraska. And there is an incident that Duct Tape and I remember where persons that we know went to school with went to this audition for this movie To Wong Foo. And so now I'm going to hand it over to Duct Tape, and I'm going to let him go into minute, accurate detail about what this audition was like.
Well, the one thing when you were talking about that black preacher that he said that black folks really never cared for drag queens. He says this in his sermon. He's like, we really never cared for that. But Tyler Perry, he did like a grassroots thing. You remember he started out in plays, and he went around with those plays and sold them in churches, and people trying to support a black man. And like you said, something you pointed out, he did this for decades. In the beginning, is one thing. Like, okay, you got a couple plays out there.
By the time you saw Medea on a movie, that shit was already old. Because I gotta tell you something. Like when I first moved to Atlanta, I would hear radio show commercials for Medea plays throughout the Southeast. He wasn't just in Atlanta; he was all throughout the Southeast touring with these plays.
Hold it. What year? What year did you go to Atlanta? Because you moved around before that. So what year do you think that was?
Listen, this guy was doing this shit in the early '90s. He was doing Medea plays in the early '90s.
So what we're saying?
I'll give you an example. When Freaknik was at his peak, this motherfucker was getting freaky, putting on dresses.
And the point that we're making is that that's a great character. He probably could have, when he first got started, he probably could have done it for like 10 years. And then as the character grew into a movie character, they could have found a larger black woman to play the role. But again, there seems to be a thing, and we just keep saying Hollywood, but there seems to be a thing when it comes to black men being emasculated. And you look at the buck breaking, and we had whole islands. They would take black men to islands before they call it seasoning. They'd take them to the islands and do some emasculating shit to them. They would like bowling. Remember, they would bury the slaves and throw the fucking cannonballs at their heads. They would rape them in front of their families. So the buck breaking thing, we were told this. They would find a pregnant woman and cut the baby out of it and dash the baby with
in the Caribbean. They did that
in the Caribbean before they brought them. So
Columbus and his men did that actually.
Yeah, when we talk about emasculation, we're not just talking about there's other things besides cutting your balls off. You can emasculate somebody else. These are terroristic tactics. And so let's fast forward. I graduate high school, I go to college, and I'm coming back. We all have aspirations of being famous and doing crazy shit. So we're at work. It's like there's about 5 or 6 of us, homeboys, that we went to high school together, or something. We've known each other, in high school, and we're at work, and all of a sudden there's a rumor that, hey man, y'all gonna laugh, but they're shooting the next Wesley Snipes movie in Nebraska, and so the exact words. It's got to be an action movie, right?
That's exactly what everybody thinks. Nobody is thinking that this is some type of comedy or anything that was totally 180 of what we're thinking.
So there's 5 of us, right? and they're doing a casting call for the Wesley Snipes movie. They're having auditions in Lincoln. They need extras. They need people to fill in. I'm like, oh, that's dope. We gather up, and so all five of us load up in these two cars, and we drive from Omaha to Lincoln. Now, looking back, Roscoe looked it up. They actually had a casting call in Omaha, but I didn't know about that. So, but like I said, we're at work. The rumor is Wesley Snipes movie. We thinking Passenger 57. You know what I'm saying? We thinking always bet on black. You know, so we jump in the cars and we drive out there. And it's me and one homeboy in my car and three other homeboys in the car in front of me. And we're talking like, hey, man, hey, nigga, you look more like Wesley. Hey, man, you're his complexion. No, I'm lighter. I got the bill. You know, we're talking. We're all excited. And we get there, and the line is literally out the door. There's all these people who are auditioning for this movie for extras. And the only odd thing that we noticed, we're the only black people. Ain't nobody else black. Everybody else is either Mexican, you know, some kind of Latino, or white. Everybody's white. And I'm like, well, shit, we got this, nigga. We excited now because we're like, man, one of us gonna make it. One of us gonna make it because hell, ain't no black people here.
But so, what did you notice about the guys that were standing in line?
I see, at the time, I only noticed it later on. But
because your radar for that kind of shit was pretty primitive.
Yes, I didn't have gaydar back then. Is that what you're saying?
No, everybody did. Everybody did, but for that kind of shit.
Yeah, so we wait at least an hour or so just to get in the building because, like I said, when you realize this line went on for like almost a block, maybe 2 blocks, so it takes an hour for us to even get in the building, and that's when it hits you. There's no really big guys. These guys are not muscular. Most of these guys are kind of frail,
twinks,
skinny. Not that bad. You saw some feminine cats, but most of them are like these college guys. They're just lanky, wiry. Nobody really who was muscular had no broad shoulders. Ain't no. How about this? Ain't no baseball players. Ain't no football players in this crowd. You feel me? So at some point, the weirdest shit happens, where some kind of way the word comes down the line where they're like, hey, you know, we've been in line at least, like I said, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. We get inside the building, and some kind of way they go, hey, you gotta put a dress on. I'm like, what the fuck are y'all talking about? And so when they say that, for context, you know, like I said, I'm going into my sophomore year of college. I've only driven in Lincoln one other time before this by myself. I mean, so clearly I just drove from Oklahoma, so I'm not afraid of the drive. So, but in my mind, I'm like, we just drove all this way. What the fuck is this about? And so they're like, hey, the conversations had like, hey, shit, we could be in a movie. And I'm like, I don't want to be in a movie that bad. And they're like, you don't want your chance to be in a movie? I'm like, no, I'm not putting on a dress. So I'm like, well, y'all cool because we drove 2 cars. I'm driving my truck back home. Y'all could all fit in the homie's car because, like, again, the dead homie drove also. And so I'm like, they're like, are you serious? Are you serious? I'm like, man, shit, I might have kids one day. Y'all is not about to have me in no motherfucking dress. Fuck that shit. And then I got to hit them with, my mama didn't raise me like that. You know what I'm saying? and so I had it wasn't my Nissan, it was my Mazda. So I jumped on my Mazda truck, little B2300, and I drive back to Omaha. And we didn't have to be to work till like 4 o'clock. So this is like morning-ish. You know, I'm sure it probably started at 9 or something. Yeah. So by now it's midday. So I drive back to Omaha by myself. You know what I'm saying? No bullshit.
You're clutching steer to my these fucking silly ass motherfuckers. Ain't no fucking way. That mental conversation must have been a trip on the way back.
It wasn't terrible. It's just the fact that I'm not going to wear a dress. You know, like it wasn't that hard. I'm like, oh fuck it, shit. You just would take I-80 back home. You know, going what is it, east? Yeah, okay, fine, I'll figure it out. And that was it. I didn't think much of it. Some other events happened that day that were kind of significant. That's why this day is so clear. A friend of mine gets sick, whatever, and so I go to work, and I end up having to rush this guy to the hospital. And I ended up talking to his mother, and she said the reason he did that because he was one of the people that auditioned for this role, right? And so she's like, look, if you want to be an actor, that means you got to learn how to do this. His mom was harsh. Mom did not play. She was like, if you want to be an actor, you can't be throwing up, getting scared, making yourself sick over a role. And she was like, that's what she was talking about. So again, so let's fast forward.
Hold on. One thing I didn't ask you is, did Bernard have anything to say about this whole situation? He was a very opinionated dude.
No. Everybody thought because Bernard, cause that's the dead homie that I mentioned. So no, everybody just thought it was going to be in a movie. That's all that mattered.
So Bernard did it too?
Yes.
Oh, nigga.
So you
talk about a Medea. That's the Medea.
Well, okay. Let me clarify something. This dude was the rapper of the group. He had lyrics. Jive was looking at this dude back then. So people don't understand. Like when it comes to the entertainment industry, it's like athletes. They got feelers everywhere. Like back in the day, people could you could sneak under the radar. But now, if you're an athlete with any talent, football, basketball, baseball, they will find you. Somebody will call ESPN. Somebody will. So you can. But that's the same way as with the rap industry. If you got any talent, they'll find you. So, like I said, there is 5 of us. There's the big dark skinned guy. Bernard's a big light skinned guy. Another dark.
Bernard was brown skinned.
Yeah, he's middle of the road. But Bernard is just a big dude though. He's not muscular.
Bernard was like 6'3" and just like chunky.
Yeah, big dude. And so that was part of the conversation. Again, you got to understand that we didn't know about the dress thing. So we get there, we're thinking that we're going to stand in for Wesley, and we're all like, "Hey, dude, you don't look shit like Wesley, nigga. You ain't gonna get the role." That's the kind of conversations we're having. Then the dress comes down the pipeline, like, "Hey, you got to put on a dress for this, this, and this." I'm out. Now the reason we're laughing about this now is because 17 years later, one of the individuals is at my house, and this, like I said, we told the story before the podcast. I want to explain how I want to set this up. So this guy is big, muscular dude. He's about 6'1", probably let's say 250, 260, and he's muscular. And ain't nothing feminine about this nigga. I know different, but physical appearance, no. So we're in this is at my house. We're in my basement. Is him, 3 other individuals, and out of nowhere he goes, "Hey, duct tape. You remember when we had to wear that dress to be in that Wesley Snipes movie?" And everybody stopped, and I'm like, "We nothing, nigga. You French? You got a mouse in your pocket, motherfucker? What the fuck do you mean we?" None of us knew that he made it. He made it to I don't know the casting call or what, but this motherfucker never told us that he actually made it to the that he won the audition. So at some point in time, he had to wear a dress. I don't know if he was actually in the movie or what, but this nigga made it, and he never told us.
What's weird about all this is that when you see these dudes put on his dresses, you have these people that look like they could pass for a woman that's, in this ugly woman. And then you have motherfuckers that look just weird. So then I'm wondering, are you going for the weird, like, what the fuck am I looking at look? Or are you looking for like somebody that's like a ugly ass woman? Kind of like the way Dave Chappelle in his most recent comedy special was talking about how when he met Jim Carrey, but Jim Carrey was pretending to be Andy Kaufman, and he had to act like this motherfucker was Andy Kaufman, but he said, but that's what it feels like to deal with a trans person.
Look, he said, I'm trying to beat Jim, motherfucker. He said it was Norm Macdonald that introduced him. He's like, I couldn't wait to meet Jim. He said, I call him Jim. Don't call him Jim, he's Andy. No, this is Jim. Andy, it's nice to meet you. Motherfucker, I want to meet Jim Carrey. So,
he said all afternoon he had to call that motherfucker Andy.
Look, the reason this is is so hard to talk about because until you see how big our homeboy is, that like what are you going? Like he said, what are you going for? The only example I got, if y'all ain't old enough, you ain't gonna know. But there was a basketball player, Larry Johnson. He used to call him Grandmama, and he had these commercials where he would
shit.
And pretend like he was his grandma.
You just reminded me of that shit.
And so, like that shit. The only reason that shit was funny because this nigga could not pass for a woman. This nigga had a brush cut, muscular, big arms, shoulder. He's a power forward.
But here's the thing,
So,
though. Here's the thing. White motherfuckers like always want to make fun of black women, of the ugly black women that have their father's features. And they tend to say this shit that, oh, you know, a lot of black women look like men. And then, like, that's where I think this whole Michelle Obama is a man bullshit came from. Because it came from the same people that were holding up these picket signs when Obama got elected. And they had a tribesman with a bone through his nose saying, "This is our president." That's the same type of people that came up with this Michelle Obama is a man bullshit, which I think is complete bullshit.
hey, so I just saw this video of God damn it, he just died. Everybody's mad at him about Richard Pryor. He slept with Richard Pryor. So Paul Mooney. Paul Mooney said the deepest shit. God, he said some deep shit. And if you pay attention to what he says, so when we used to grow up, they would always call black people monkeys and apes and shit like that,
Yeah.
right?
I got a friend of mine that tried that bullshit, and I had to correct his ass.
So if you he says the deepest shit. In real talk, if you pay attention, they don't call us monkeys and chimps anymore. I just thought it was odd, but I don't know if it's because of this. It looked like it was on Showtime at the Apollo, and he goes, "Funny thing is, y'all love to call us gorillas and monkeys and shit, but I looked at a monkey. A monkey ain't got no lips. A monkey got long, stringy hair. A monkey,
And what he's describing are the basic features
of
a white person.
Yeah. So when he says this shit, you're like, and that's funny now because y'all don't understand. Back in the day, they would always draw. They don't do that anymore. But that's because
Yet white people always want to say they come from monkeys.
That's because the science says different. Like I said, the science. So look this shit up. If you don't, there's 3% of the population have the Asians and the white people have one thing in common that black people don't. 3% of the Asians, 3% of the white, a lot of white people have Neanderthal DNA. They Neanderthals crossbred with us, and so you can look this shit up. And so what happens is these folks try to get mad because black folks don't have that. So that means we were never cavemen. A lot of times, so there's a joke out there. There's a theory. George Washington Carver is a joke, but people say it might be real because this guy's super intelligent. So he was big into peanuts. If you have a peanut allergy, what does that mean? It means two things. One, either you were introduced to starches too early. Folks aren't supposed to have starches until they're 6 years old. A lot of people, if you have starches too early introduced to you, it will give you allergies to other foods. But if you have a peanut allergy, that means you have Neanderthal DNA. Look that shit up. This is not a joke. If you have a peanut allergy, that usually means you have Neanderthal DNA. There are people that have peanut allergies that don't have Neanderthal DNA, but that's based on you being introduced to starches too soon in your development. Look, this is no. So some people actually thought that maybe George Washington Carver was big into peanuts to get back at these folks for cutting his balls off. That's an actual joke, but it's a theory that's out there. So when you got people calling you monkeys and all this other shit, but it's actually in their DNA, that's some kind of
gaslighting. That's gaslighting.
Yes. That's very good. I didn't see it like that, but yes, that's gaslighting. You are transposing something on me.
Check this out. But then think about this whole cave thing. This whole thing about like living in caves and being a caveman. There's very few caves in Africa.
There's no need.
But if you look at the topography of Africa, there's way more open. There's open savanna. There's jungle. There's desert. Ain't no caves, man. So ain't no black people living in caves. That comes from Europe when the Europeans left Africa.
The Wormian Ice Age. Yeah, the Wormian Ice Age, 30,000 years ago.
Yeah.
They have. Now here's the crazy part. They do have paintings in South America that don't line up. They have cave paintings in South America that are, I don't want to lie, but I think they're 12,000 years old. I'm not trying to embellish. But the thing is, if you do your research, black folks were in South America 50,000 years ago. So But
check it out. But here's the thing: what people got to understand. People got to understand that there are forces behind this push to make a black man wear a dress, to castrate them, to emasculate them. So people always wonder, well, why is it they're trying to make us wear dresses, and why is it this, why is it that? And you got to understand, like, a lot of these writers for these comedies were Jewish guys. So there's this idea that, there's like that the black people are the low man on the totem pole. And so then these Jews that are writing this shit are punching down. But then it's deeper than that, because all these orders come from above. So it comes from executives. Well, what is behind all this? People have to understand there's a culture of death cults and dark arts practitioners that are the forces propping up the entertainment industry. Baphomet is the deity that represents their ideology. Where did that deity come from? Here's a little bit of history on that. Johannes Reuchlin taught a Kabbalistic, as in Kabbalah, version of Catholicism. He taught that the devil was morally neutral. He was a scholar of Greek and Hebrew, whose work also took him to modern-day Austria, Switzerland, Italy, and France. Switzerland, the area that Khazarians passed through on their way to Russia. The teachings of Johannes Reuchlin was an inspiration for Eliphas Levi. In 1861, he printed the first widely distributed image of Baphomet on his book. That book was called Transcendental Magic, Its Doctrine and Ritual. Levi and his teachings were protected by the Catholic Church due to the curiosity of Pope Pius IX. Pope Clement VII was called a sodomite bastard.
Oh, that's fucked up.
The Kabbalistic practices were beginning to infiltrate the Catholic Church. Ein Sof is part of the ideology of these Kabbalistic pirates. Ein Sof being spelled two words. First one is E-I-N. Second word is S-O-F. Ein Sof. The Zohar explains the term Ein Sof as the following. Before he gave any shape to the world, before he produced any form, he was alone, without form, and without resemblance to anything else. Who then can comprehend how he was before the creation? Hence, it is forbidden to lend him any form or similitude, or even call him by his sacred name, or to indicate him by any single letter or a single point. But after he created the form of heavenly man, he used him as a chariot wherein to descend, and he wishes to be called after his form, which is a sacred name, Yahweh. Aleister Crowley is often mentioned in hushed tones amongst celebrities. Crowley, who was a Luciferian, started his own religion called Thelema. There was a TV show that came out about 2 years ago called Sacred Angel. And
really?
Yeah, it was a TV show about Jack Parsons. And this Jack Parsons TV show talked about how Parsons was a self-taught astrophysicist, and he made the first rockets. And it was his rocket inventions that helped win World War II, and it got the interest of Wernher von Braun, and they created NASA together. Yeah. So, but JPL, that you hear all the time, is they call the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. It's actually the Jack Parsons Laboratory. So he was a Luciferian devil worshiper, and he would practice sex magic. Now, throughout Hollywood, you hear all about these sex cults and these sex magic rituals. NXIVM was probably the biggest one to be exposed in the past 10 years. And NXIVM had this guy, had women branding themselves on their arms and then right above their vagina as property. And there was all these like famous actresses and actors that were part of this. Allison Mack, who was on the Smallville TV show, the blonde chick, she was the one who like wound up being a scapegoat for it, but she wasn't the main one. She just kind of just absorbed like a lot of that shit. But
But so, the shit becomes fashionable though. So
mm-hmm.
these motherfuckers are branding themselves not knowing the full meaning of that shit, and they
Oh, they
think the
know.
shit's
They
cute.
know. No, they know. But there was also a party last year in the Hollywood Hills, and there was this. I think Amanda Bynes, or one of these famous Amanda. I think it's Amanda Bynes. She was having this party where everybody had to give a drop of blood just to get into the party,
Man,
and there was a murder that night on the street outside the house. So that murder was a sacrifice.
Yeah, that sounds like a sacrifice to
So
me.
now here's the crazy part, because a lot of these celebrities tend to have family members that die once they become famous. Kanye West is an example. Jennifer Hudson is an example.
Hudson, yep. Keep
All
going.
these people, these famous black people, tend to have a relative that dies. And it appears that it's a sacrifice because after this person dies, they become famous. Well, Jennifer Hudson's mother died, and then she got this show
They
that's on
become more
TV.
famous.
Mm-hmm.
They become, but the thing is, like the problem with Kanye is people think he tried to renounce the shit. And
He didn't.
if you say so,
He
but
just
I'm
covered
saying,
it up.
oh well, look, if you look at what he's saying now and what he's doing, he's going to get. Here's the deal. So this sounds so bad to say. A lot of people say Mike was the same way. A lot of people say Tupac was the same way.
Mike who?
A lot of Michael Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
That he gets in there, finds out what the shit's really like, and that's when he tries to give this shit up. That's
But
when
Cat
music.
Williams, in one of his first comedy specials, was talking about, I don't know if it was Pimp Chronicles or the second one, but he was talking about he went to a Hollywood party.
Yeah, that was his first. Yeah.
And he
We all
saw
laughed at that
these
joke.
famous people doing weird sexual things, and he was us as the audience, like, what the fuck is this bullshit? What is going on?
Yeah. He said Professor Opie Cunningham.
Mm-hmm.
Professor Cunningham? Like, what the fuck?
Right.
So.
But let me stop you right there. In this conversation that he had with Shannon Sharp on January the 4th, it's funny because like this is the January 6th for black people. Like, this is it's a trip because what he talked about is gatekeepers. Now, a lot of these people that he was talking about as gatekeepers, they became gatekeepers once they put on dresses. Because he talked about how Martin Lawrence had contacted him once he blew up, and he wanted him to be in a cop movie. It's going to be funny. And then he goes
said a
to
cop buddy movie.
He said he goes to the Martin Lawrence office, and he shows him the script and his Big Mama's house. And he's like, nigga, I ain't doing this. What's wrong with you?
Well, no, it's Big Mama's house too.
Yeah, but here's the thing though. Brandon T. Jackson, there's an interview that resurfaced in the past couple days, and he talks about how everything went wrong once he put that dress on. He said he'd already like got some fame from a lottery ticket, and he was in Tropic Thunder,
Yep.
And then they wanted him to be
Al Pacino.
They wanted him to be in Big Mama's house with Martin Lawrence. Cat Williams was talking to him at the time, and he said, "Don't do it, don't do it." And Brandon T. Jackson actually admits that he was wrong for taking the role, and that Cat Williams was right by warning him not to do it. He said because everything went wrong after that. Now, while he's giving this interview, in retrospect, speaking about this decision that he made that ruined his career, he's wearing the Star of David around his neck. And he's talking about how this is a spiritual war. This is spiritual warfare. So he just, in one sentence, he says, is spiritual war. Now, what he also says, and people did not pick up on this, he said, if it's your religion, if it's in your religion for you to wear a dress, then that's your dress. That's his Baphomet shit that he's talking about. That is the dark arts worship. And he said, my life is better now that I'm out of that shit. Which means that he saw some dark shit, and he's not talking about everything that he saw.
Okay, I'm gonna give another example of this. Jaleel White talks about when he had to wear a dress on the set. He cried. His dad came to his rescue. They were kept pushing him and pushing him, and his dad said, "My son said he's done." And so it looked. Please forgive me. I don't know what it was from.
For people who don't know who Jaleel White, Steve Urkel, the black actor
yeah.
that plays Steve Urkel, and that's crazy because Urkel did wear a dress in like one episode.
Yeah, I think it was more than one. Whatever it was a character, like his sister. But he didn't want to do it, and so they talk him into it. He does it, but afterwards he's kind of emotionally drained.
But here's another thing though, like people wonder why like he would never show up to those cast reunions. That's one of the reasons. I mean, people's like he got an ego. Yeah, that's part of it, but it's more to it than that. Like
that's trauma. That's PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
That's you having to relive some shit. But he said his dad protected him. He said my dad was like, y'all leave my son alone. He said he did what you asked, let it go. But even then, when you look at the interview with Dave Chappelle and Oprah, Dave tells you they kept coming at me and coming at me and come. He said first they send the wardrobe guy, then they send the director, then they send the studio people, then they send the producer, and then he said, "You think this shit's done?" 6 hours later, they send somebody else. Hey, Dave, we really would appreciate you. Like, no. But him and Kat both said the same thing. It's a hack. It's been done before. Why do I need to do it again? In that interview with Club Shay Shannon Sharp, Kat says the same thing. He said, she already wore a dress. Why you got to wear a dress again? Why do you got to have two niggas in a dress? What he describes, something must have happened to Martin because Martin, he said Martin was sick. Martin said,
do you not remember the breakdown that he had around the year 2000?
Yes, of course I do. But I don't know for sure if that was what it was. But Martin told him, said, look, Kat, I got to go away for a while. I got to get some rest. But when I come back, I need you to do a movie with me. We're doing a cop movie, a buddy movie. And Kat said, yeah, bro, I'll do anything you ask. You're one of the best people I know. And then Kat goes, it was Big Mama's house too. He's like, oh hell no. And he said, I fought the whole time. That's why they went and got somebody else, because he said I was not going to wear a dress. But also, when you were talking about that, for the very first comedy special with Kat, where he goes, that these niggas in Hollywood thought that I was gay because I have a high voice. But he describes it as trying to get in the club, and he said, you ever wait outside for the club? You think it's jumping, you wait in line, you get in there, and the shit's bunk. He said that's how Hollywood was. I got on the inside, and I came back out to describe it to y'all, so y'all understand.
Who said that?
Not what you thought. Kat Williams says it.
So I got this article pulled up for the Los Angeles Times, May 8th, 1996. Comedian Martin Lawrence runs into street and yells at cars. With a pistol in his pocket, comedian Martin Lawrence ran into traffic on a busy Ventura Boulevard in Sherman Oaks on Tuesday, cursing and screaming at oncoming cars until he was taken away by police and hospitalized by authorities. Wow. So after police restrained Lawrence, he was taken to Sherman Oaks Hospital Health Center and later released to his personal physician, Dr. William Young of Cedars-Sinai. A witness who declined to be identified, but who said he was an acquaintance of Lawrence, said the actor was cursing, waving his hands, yelling, "Fight the establishment." He said Lawrence ran out of the street when police arrived and tried to fight them off when they attempted to restrain him. Lawrence had a handgun in his pants pocket, and detectives will ask the city attorney office to charge him with misdemeanor possession of a concealed firearm. Police said Lawrence may have had a seizure because he failed to take a prescribed medication, but a statement from Lawrence's publicist, Kim Jones, offered another explanation. A doctor found Lawrence to be suffering from a case of complete exhaustion and dehydration. He made the leap from television to film when he co-starred with Will Smith in Bad Boys. Yes, we know all that. But, so they're claiming that it's exhaustion and dehydration and temporary insanity, and that's how he got off.
Look, all I'm saying is that a lot of these guys, that when they try to renounce their deal with the devil don't let them go. And then they start doing this kind of shit to try to get out the contract, but they don't let them go.
What's crazy is there was a Super Bowl ad in 2018, I believe it was. And it was a car commercial, and it had Willem Dafoe as the devil, and he had a Masonic ring on, and he had somebody signing over their life for something. But I remember the Masonic ring, and he said, there's something like, "You're making deals with the devil," and I'm like, ooh boy, ain't that some shit.
Hold it. If we're gonna go there, let's talk about Bill Cosby. Do you remember when he did that Disney movie where he was the devil? And that motherfucker, I think he had a ring on in that one. um, it's the Devil and Max Julian or something like that. Look, the let's get back to the original. The point is that many times emasculation is a part of these ceremonies. Many times these are rituals, and that's why they want you to put this dress on. And these rituals are either satanic, religious, or just the fact that they think it's funny to make this big, strong, virile black man do some bitch shit. And it's hard to get people to understand that shit. It's like, look, yeah, your people taught my people. Your people were this. Your people were that. But I can make you where I have power now, and I can make you do this shit. So if we're not even talking about the satanic shit, we're just talking about, you know what? I'm in charge, and I'm telling you to wear a dress.
Yeah.
And so
the movie is called The Devil and Max Devlin. And,
excuse me, I'm sorry.
And his character is called Barney Satin. But you know.
Yeah. And so the thing that people don't get is that there are certain aspects of racism that people deny. The funny thing that Cat Williams said some shit. He said once somebody signs a deal, it's their job to act like it didn't happen, to deny it. But and one of the things with racism is power. Racism is a power dynamic. And so when you talk about when you see these guys go to these third world countries and they get these little girls and they pee on them and shit on them and everything else, and they come back over here, and that's racism. That's that power dynamic. So if I can make this motherfucker who is 6'6", 300 pounds, I can make you wear a dress, nigga, and you can't do shit. And because you want to be famous and you want to be liked and you want to get into this cabal, because you want to be a gatekeeper, because you want to be boule, you'll do this shit. And then next thing you know, yeah, see now, you see how much prosperity you got now? That's all because of me. And so, like I said, the whole idea of emasculating a black man in public is some shit that gets the white man hard. And I ain't down for that shit.
Look at this shit. The plot of this movie is Max, the corrupt businessman, makes a Faustian pact with Satan's henchmen to drive 3 people to hell in exchange for a longer life. Soon, Max realizes that there still may be good in him. So, the supernatural is a part of all these emasculation campaigns. And I was talking about Aleister Crowley. It was called Strange Angel. That's what it was. Strange Angel is a TV show y'all should check out. But
that's crazy. I hadn't heard. I'm going to ask a dumb question. What network was it? Just
that was on CBS streaming.
The app.
Mm-hmm.
No shit.
So, Crowley was a Luciferian who started his own religion called Thelema. When the teenager known as Damien Eccles was arrested as part of the Memphis Six, he was visited by celebrities while he was in jail. Eccles was a follower of Aleister Crowley. The celebrities that visited Eccles in jail were Eddie Vedder, Margaret Cho, Johnny Depp, and there's others. But all those people that I mentioned are dark arts practitioners. So Margaret Cho is into BDSM. Once you start going in that direction, then you're already headed towards the darkness. And spirit cooking and Marina Abramovic became very popular with celebrities since Abramovic had a New York City art show called Spirit Cooking in 1997. Now that bitch keeps popping up everywhere. Recently, with all these different celebrities like Lady Gaga and her meat dress, and the war in Ukraine, and how she's now a spokesperson. Like, why is this bitch, who's just some visual artist, now the ambassador for Ukraine and shit? I'm like, what is it? What is all this shit about? I'm like, oh, the Khazarians. These are Khazarian dark arts worshippers. And then, you start to look at this and it's like, well, it goes way deeper than that. These people worship the dark arts. And black people get tangled up in white people shit trying to be part of their organizations. And it happens all the time. And that's the whole reason why black people started their own colleges, is because we couldn't get into there. So it's like, fine, let's do our own our own education system and we'll be separate from them. But then you had those Negroes that wanted to be accepted by white people so much, and they wanted to be part of that, that they copied exactly what they did at Yale at black universities, and they created their own group called the Boule, which is the black version of Skull and Bones.
Look, if you guys don't believe what my brother's saying, look up Spelman College. They just talk about Spelman in Atlanta. Me and you just talked about. You know who Spelman's named after, right? Henry Ford's wife. Spelman is not even a black person. Yeah. So this shows you that. So what they do is they create this level of boule, where boule is French for advisor to the king. They're a black secret society, and what they do is they're gatekeepers. So when you hear Cat Williams holler gatekeeper, 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 he's not saying it. He's not saying it figuratively. He's saying it literally and emotionally and every other kind of lead there is. He's telling you that this guy's a gatekeeper, and he will grab other people and bring them up, but they'll be beholden to him, but they'll never
who controls the entertainment industry? The intelligence agencies. And if they can find a way to assassinate us without killing us, then they will do it. And they are assassinating the male image of black America by continually going to these studio executives and having them take notes and say, here, these are the notes. I want any prominent black male that you have come to your studio has to put on a dress. We're going to let him get a little notoriety, and then he has to put a dress on. These are intelligence agencies that are doing this because they are shaping culture. They're the whole reason why this weird-ass art was created. This postmodern art is a creation of the CIA. They want people to worship ugly art and ugly architecture. This brutalist architecture that came from the Soviet bloc. They want people to like ugly architecture, ugly art, self-hatred, basically creating hell on earth through gaslighting the shit out of people. Then you have other black people who will follow along with these celebrities because that's somebody who represents us. There are no more black leaders. There aren't. Name one. Name one that is not corrupt. Name one that has not been co-opted. It doesn't belong to a secret society. There aren't any.
Name one that you listen to. How about this?
There aren't any. Now, then you have people who are influencers that, people want, Dr. Umar, fuck that guy. Listen, all these people, they're all clowns. They're all clowns, and they're not worthy of being our leaders. But the thing is, we do not need a leader. What we do need is a strong family unit. That's what you need, because you have to go back to the village model, where if the village, if the man and woman fall apart, the family falls apart. If the family falls apart, the village falls apart. Village falls apart, the city falls apart, the country falls apart, everything falls apart. And that is what is happening. It's a demoralization campaign, and it's being done on purpose. But our demoralization campaign has been happening since before communists were trying to create a controlled demolition of this country. It has been happening to us since the moment we got here.
Look, Roscoe, so one of the things that drives me crazy, look, I don't care if you're gay. Don't care if you're feminine. That's cool. But stop making it seem like it's more important than what it is. And what I mean by that, I just saw this gay guy on Instagram, black guy, going off on Dr. Umar and saying like, hey, man, you talking separate this, and he just goes off, and he's way too emotional. But then I see a video of this one guy, I forgot his name. He does workout stuff. He talks to Andrew Tate, but he said, look, he said, I've met Putin. I talked to Putin. He said, well, no, he said, excuse me, I said it wrong. He said, I spoke to Steven Seagal over in Dubai, doing an event. And he says, you don't realize what it's like over in Russia. He said, these kids learn how to fight in gym class. And he said they throw jabs in gym class until they get to fourth grade. Then they start throwing right crosses. And then these other countries are training their men to be masculine. These other countries are are making their children to strong adults. But then you got our vice president going over to Nigeria offering them $300 million if they talk about same sex marriages and shit like that. I have no problem with somebody being gay, but we need to wake up to the fact that masculinity is what's going to protect us and save us in a bad situation. There's nothing wrong with being masculine. There's nothing wrong with it. There is a such thing as toxic masculinity, but masculinity itself is not toxic. And I think it's crazy that right now that anytime a black man wants to be masculine, he gets struck down. He gets put in a dress. He gets this. He gets that. Look, I don't know what I would do if you gave me $2 or $3 million. I get it, you know, but that's another thing that Kat was talking about. Same thing with Dave. People say Dave turned down $50 million. Kat explained it. No, Dave turned down $250 million or $150 million. Excuse me. Look, what Kat was saying. He said I was offered $50 million on 4 separate occasions. I turned it down. That tells you right there that a lot of us don't have scruples. A lot of us are being manipulated, and a lot of us are more worried about money than our actual souls. I can't do that. I gotta have my kids respect me. I gotta be able to hold my head up high. I got a funny story. So me and my daughter was talking about something, and I said, "Yeah, so I used to have biker shorts. You wore biker shorts because I'm so hyper masculine." I'm like, well, back then I was in junior high, and biker shorts I had these body glove joints. You know what I'm saying? She's like, I'm like, baby, no, it's not what you think. Looking back, I probably shouldn't have worn biker shorts because my daughter just made fun of me. But it's the fact that just because somebody offers you money, your soul should not be for sale. That should be yours.
You know the funny thing about that biker short thing? I remember when that was a popular thing. You know who was wearing some biker shorts in the movie? Martin Lawrence. And he was wearing them and Do the Right Thing. And I remember the whole biker shorts thing, and I went to the store and I looked at them. I'm like, nah, this ain't it. This ain't where it's at.
Look, I wore my swimming trunks, but it's again.
Yeah, but you can't walk around like and see like okay, basketball players. Michael Jordan would wear them underneath his basketball shorts.
Yeah, but those were actually for hernias. Those weren't biker shorts. Those were like they use those for hernias and stuff to protect you. Those weren't like biker shorts like that these kids were wearing. Those were like medical. The ones those basketball players were for groin. Those were for groin injuries and stuff. That was to stop that. It didn't work. People still.
It was keep your nuts from swinging around. So, but the thing is that I saw that shit and I'm like, this ain't the move.
Yeah. Look, I was a slave to fashion when we were in junior high, and I'm like, looking back. But that's the whole thing is that look, even that I have regrets. So I can't imagine wearing a dress on TV. Yeah, like I can't do it. The reason Roscoe brought up that audition was for a movie called Tu Wong Fu, Thank You, Judy Newmar. And the crazy part is that movie came out like 3 or 4 years after we had that whole audition. It literally came out like years later. It was, I know it was filmed in '94. I don't know when it actually came out. You know what I'm saying? So, but the point I'm making is that, like, I couldn't face my mom. I couldn't come home like, hey, mom, I wore a dress today. I can't do that. My mom didn't raise me like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, she raised me to be a man, and certain things I just can't do. I don't want to disappoint your parents. I don't want to disappoint my aunts and my uncles, my grandmother. So I couldn't do that shit. And whoever did, I'm not saying that they're a bad person. I'm just saying that white people think it's funny when they got a big muscular nigga in a dress. They're like, see, I can make you do what I want. I can make you my bitch. That's how that shit feels and appears to me. And I have a problem with that. And so like I said, even when it came to that movie, again, when we were auditioning, we never knew the name of the movie. We just assumed, like I said, Wesley was in like 4 or 5 action movies. Like I said, Passenger 57 was just comes to mind, and there were other ones, and he he was doing action movies. And so that was the rumor was, hey, Wesley's shooting a movie here. So we just assumed it's an actual, didn't think nothing about no motherfucking drag queen movie. And that was another thing that pastor we brought up earlier. In the black community, we never really cared for drag queens. You know, he said RuPaul couldn't do it. Nobody could really. RuPaul got over with white folks. He wasn't over with black folks. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like we tolerated the behavior, but we never. But Medea, that character, made it okay, and that's why when Roscoe tells you when he that was like a grassroots thing that it starts in Atlanta and it worked its way up and it worked its way out, and this motherfucker was doing basically the Chitlin circuit. That's what he was doing. He was going. There are certain like black communities down south, and they call that the Chitlin circuit, and you would perform and act in black comedy, black comedy, musicians, and so he followed the Chitlin circuit and worked his way up. He essentially did what Walmart did. People forget Walmart started in Arkansas, and Walmart was in the small communities.
No, Walmart was on the boiled peanut circuit. That was white people shit.
Yeah, so but what I'm saying is that they controlled the market, their narrative, and then it became commonplace, and they went out and they took that act on the road. Look, if you wear a dress, that's you. I'm not trying to, but it's not me. And I'm not going to do it. And I got to respect my kids. And I want them to be proud of me.
This. No. We got to put that bullshit disclaimer out there. People have listened to this show that have gotten this far, understand where the fuck we coming from. This is about an organization of people that worship the dark arts, that are connected to intelligence agencies, that want to bring about the downfall of the black race. And you do that by taking away the powerful man. And this show is about how, this episode is all about how they did it. And they continue to do it. And so we have to fight back. And fighting back is like people like Cat Williams getting on interviews and blasting out to 10 million people, telling them, hey, fuck that bullshit. We ain't for that whole shit. Look, that's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.